Christina and the Complete Jew. A novel by Dr. Ahmed. This book continues the story of the Arab sugar daddy and the beautiful Indian girl, and the story of the Indian child bride and the old Arab husband, and also the story of the Indian Miss World, and the rage of Muslims of the world. They have been written in English and translated into Arabic by the author Dr. Ahmed. This story resonates with genuine love, strong resilience, and steadfast courage. I invite you to accompany me as I continue narrating the story of the rare, fabulous beauty of the Indian girl, Ifat Khan, and her extremely beautiful mother, Rehana Khan. Before we dive in the tapestry of the story, I would like to remind the reader this novel is narrated in 6 books. Book 1, The Arab Sugar Daddy and the Beautiful Indian Girl. Book 2, The Indian Child Bride and the Old Arab Husband. Book 3, The Indian Miss World and the Rage of Muslims of the World. Book 4, Christina and the Complete Jew. Book 5, The Tears of God, Jews, Blacks, and Muslim Women. And Book 6, The Hidden Life of the Prophet Muhammad. This is an intriguing epic story which exhibits resilience, love, and sacrifice. Book 4. In Search of a Companion in Her Lonely Journey in Life. Copyrights. All rights are reserved. No part of this book may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means without the prior written permission of the author, except by a reviewer, who may quote brief passages from a review for printing in a public newspaper, general magazine, school journal, or university article. All characters in this novel are fictional and any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, is merely coincidental. Chapter 14. One Christian girl married the devil, another one wedded the Antichrist. During the time Sister Christina tried to divorce her husband, she came across other 2 abused wives in the church who are like her in the same boat. Those 2 other sisters have heard about her abusive married life and come forward to share their sad married stories with her. The first one confessed that she is entirely to blame for her situation, and the second faulted her parents. Both girls told Sister Christina that they had walked down the same road she is on and that in all that time, their church leadership refused to intervene, insisting they maintain their marital status quo. The only justification for refusing intervention is a reference to the scripture, "What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder," the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verse 6. Her first confidant is Christian girl called Fiona, and the other girl is known as Natasha. Fiona's South Indian family is originally from Kerala state, but she was born and raised in Mumbai. Highly educated, she held tenure as a professor at the prestigious University of Mumbai. As it is with most Malayali girls, Fiona has the usual dark complexion, which in Mumbai whittled away her chances of getting a husband of her choice. She said she and 4 other girls from the south of India were determined to break the social and racial barriers and hoped to be able to choose their own spouses. After all, the 5 girls are all highly educated with each having a decent job. All girls vowed not to marry until their gracious Lord answered their prayers. The girls happened to be living in the same building, and every Saturday saw them meet up for 1 or 2 hours of praying and devotionals. Each of the Malayali damsels has a list of prerequisites for all prospective husbands. It is their earnest belief that their supplications and fasting are going to result in favorably divine intervention. Those conditions are religiously and ritually chanted during their prayer meetings. Their first condition, in the order of priority, is that their future husbands must be white, tall, and handsome in one neat package deal. By a white boy, Indians mean a person having a white or reddish color as opposed to a dark or black complexion. Indian girls prefer being wed to the devils than being tied down to black guys, with the typical Indian boys being even more adamant about this condition. The second condition, of course, is that the boy be a Malayali. For an Indian girl to say "I want to marry a white or reddish Malayali boy" is an oxymoron. It is akin to describing a woman as being a little bit pregnant or "I have a white-black girlfriend." Or to quote the classical example, "All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others," Animal Farm by George Orwell. 99.9% of Malayali boys are black. In reality, a combination of the first 2 conditions is next to impossible. All Indians prefer to marry someone from their caste or region because of the inherent cultural, language, and food differences. India has the highest diversity in language and religion in the world. The third condition is that he be highly educated. Last and maybe not least, is that he should be Christian, with the last condition not being a major factor because almost all Malayali boys are Christian by birth. Each girl is ready to compromise on her last requirement. She believes if the boy fulfilled all other conditions and is a nominal Christian, she can change him into a true believer after marriage. Fiona and the other Malayali girls spent days, months, and years waiting for God to grant their petitions favorably. Along the road, each of the 5 girls received marriage proposals but rejected them all because none of those guys who presented them met their requirements. After a long and patient wait, Fiona believed that her petition found grace with the good Lord when she met her dream spouse, marrying him in great haste, lest another girl else snatches him away. He is white, tall, handsome, Malayali, and highly educated, with a master's degree tucked under his belt and a nominal Christian to boot. She ignored the fact that he is only nominally Christian since the 2 factors in his case at the time were deemed superficial. He is a half-caste, his father a Malayali and his mother a white woman, which resulted in the reddish hue that he inherited, just like that of an Arab. Once he came into her life, Fiona rejoiced and boasted among her friends and relatives. She outlined her plan to subtly change him and satisfy her last conditions for an ideal spouse. A wise man once told me that a man expects the girl never to change after marriage. A girl expects to be able to change a man once they are together as a husband and a wife. But both are wrong. Those who are less gullible will remember that the Bible reminds us that Satan can masquerade as an angel of light, and in Fiona's case, her new husband turned out to be the devil incarnate. Shortly after their marriage, he demanded his dowry. In India, the bride's family is expected to pay a dowry for the privilege of gaining a son-in-law. In other third-world countries, it is the other way around. Boys pay something as dowry, the exception being the Indians and the Ceylonese. Fiona lost her father as a child. Her only guardian is her aged mother. She had quit her teaching job to join the Christian preaching outreach team, working for the Lord without pay. Her handsome husband is jobless. He is not employable because of his drug addictions and his dependence on alcohol. Whenever he feels that his wife has failed his expectations, he beats her up. His aggression extended to his mother-in-law, fueled by her refusal to sell her house to pay the rest of the dowry he felt entitled to receive from his wife's family. His mother-in-law refused to sell the residence because her house is the only roof over their collective heads. Every time her mother tried to intervene in her daughter's beatings, she also became a victim. Fiona's husband has no qualms about striking an old woman as her aged mother. After a few years in bearing him 2 daughters, Fiona is forced to face the fact that she had chosen poorly and decided that leaving her abusive married life and returning to steady employment as a teacher in college is the best option. Moving forward, her priorities are now raising her daughters and caring for her aged mother. Inexplicably, she always put aside her decision in the hopes that her husband somehow may turn over a new leaf. She continued to pray and fast for him and their hellish marital relationship. This time, instead, she prayed, fasted, and petitioned the Lord to get rid of her handsome husband, instead of keeping him around and changing him for the better. One day her husband returned inebriated and under the influence of drugs, repeating his demand for dowry. Met with the refusal to accede to pay the rest of his dowry, he went into a fit of rage and pummeled both his wife and her mother mercilessly. It is the final straw for Fiona which broke the camel back, and therefore she has decided to put an end to his presence in her life. She ran to the nearby police station and lodged a report against her husband, claiming attempted murder against both defenseless women. That very day, her husband is arrested for the first time and is beaten badly by the Indian police, given their harsh third-degree interrogation method. Somehow, her husband survived and is released shortly thereafter. He is succinctly ordered, in no uncertain terms, that he is not to go anywhere near his wife or contact her in any way. And that is how Fiona got rid of her evil husband. Notwithstanding, Fiona is still a young woman and deep down in her heart she is longing for a caring and loving husband to marry. She approached the church leadership and demanded a divorce based on domestic violence, physical, emotional, and mental abuses. The church leaders rejected her demand with the usual admonishment. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. The Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verse 9. Thus, Sister Fiona narrated her sad story to Sister Christina tearfully and told her to forget about getting a divorce, and to just walk away from her abusive husband and evil in-laws. In India, Fiona could have petitioned for a civil judgment and applied for a divorce through the Court of Marriage and Divorce. However, she knew that such a divorce would not be recognized by her church, family, relatives, and girlfriends. And if she must marry another man, she will be considered by all to have entered an adulterous relationship, and if she has children with her unrecognized second husband, they will be considered bastards or illegitimate children. The second girl, who likewise narrated her abusive married life to Sister Christina, is known as Natasha. She is in the same boat too. If Fiona had wed the devil, Natasha's husband is the Antichrist. Natasha came from the state of Gujarat. Like many of the people in her state, she is blessed with a white complexion, and this bodes well for her from a physical point of view. According to her, her parents had thrown her in the well. This dire Indian expression is used by Indians to describe the condition of a girl suffering abuse at the hands of her own parents. Natasha is a young and extremely beautiful girl. At 18, when her parents had thrown her in the well, her very white skin and European green eyes drew many male suitors and admirers. Every boy who saw her fell in love with her charm and beauty. Her parents rejected many of the Gujarati marriage proposals in favor of a mentally retarded boy from Mumbai. He has never been schooled, is illiterate, and can neither read nor write in any language. The only tempting draw factor is the fact that the boy's mother is a rich woman who lived in a resplendent home. A widow with 2 sons and a daughter, with her other children normal. Her daughter lives in the United States of America. Laying claim to an overseas daughter also contributed to and enhanced the social status of the widow. In keeping with their position in society, they subtly described their daughter as being so holy and committed that she has married the Lord Jesus Christ and became his perpetual bride. In Indian parlance, this means that she became a full-time servant of the Lord, or in Catholic terms, a nun who became the bride of Jesus. She is a nun in a South Indian church branch located in America. It is the same as the New Delhi church branch of the 2 Good Samaritans, Nancy and Annie, where they used to be virgin nuns before they got raped by the Muslim terrorists. Even so, down the road, that virgin bride would divorce the Lord in favor of marrying 2 men. Her second husband is an American pastor, and he too is a divorced old man and many years older than her. To sweeten the prospect of accepting the marriage proposal, the rich woman also enticed Natasha into believing that her son is due to fly to America shortly to be with his sister. She was made to understand that the moment they are married, the couple will travel to the United States of America, the promised land that flows with honey and money, and live happily ever after. Before going to a village in Gujarat state and seeking a bride for her mentally retarded son, the rich woman had proposed to more than a dozen girls in Mumbai, but all families declined the betrothals for the same reason: her mad son is an unmarriageable boy. One bold woman told her on her face she should not look for a bride because her son cannot be a husband. She added, "No girl is going to marry such a mentally retarded boy." Sadly, the beautiful Gujarati girl Natasha did not get a chance to sit and talk to her fiancé before she married him. Instead, she put her fate in the hands of her parents, who visited her soon-to-be husband and in-laws, and they spent 2 days as guests. Given their visit, her parents obviously could not plead innocence and claim to have been misled. The fiancé of their daughter, who was going to be her future groom, has an obvious mental disability, but the wealth, opulence, and displayed material prosperity had her parents readily agreeing to the marriage. Natasha thus has found herself being saddled like a mare that has been yoked with an ass. Her mad husband has the cognitive abilities of a child. She dutifully accepted her fate in life and agreed to live in the Christian matrimonial union. Not long after, she found out that her husband was not eligible for a visa to go anywhere. In India, a prospective immigrant to the USA must be highly educated and highly skilled in work, with demonstrable fluency in English with relevant work experience to score enough on his application. Her mentally retarded husband would score 0 in any Western consulate. Once his wife, it became apparent that he was the laughingstock everywhere she went with him, even in her church. Yes, Indians can be very rude and make fun of the mentally challenged person. It came to the point where she hated stepping out of the house with him. Naturally, in India, he is not employable, and Natasha readily admitted to Fiona that he had not the slightest idea what marriage entailed. Whenever he had the urge, he would just jump over her body and rape her or have rudimentary sex just like that of the animals. Romance and foreplay are simply not in his vocabulary. Sex with him came to be associated with pain and resentment. When she delivered, the child was found to have inherited his father's mental capacity. Natasha tolerated it all and stayed 10 long years with her mentally disabled husband. Despite her immediate spousal issues, she admitted that during her long and difficult marriage, her real problem was none other than her mother-in-law. Her mother-in-law simply eclipsed her husband in cruelty. Although she had married her son, from day one she was told that her real husband was his mother. She simply announced that since her son was not capable of making any decisions, that singular privilege must fall to her. She would inevitably decide the kind of clothes Natasha could wear, what her bedtime would be, when she would be expected to awaken, what she was to eat and when, where she was to go, and with whom she was expected to travel anywhere. The only place she was allowed to go with her husband was the church. It was the same South Indian church in the Vileparle neighborhood that Christina had visited and got kicked out of it due to her so-called improper Western dress. This is the branch in Mumbai and the mother church in Madras. Whenever Natasha went to the market to buy groceries, meat, and vegetables, her mother-in-law would be accompanying her. She was suspected to fall in love with a guy who has a normal mind or run away to her family in Gujarat if she was allowed to be alone out of the house without her mother-in-law as a chaperone. Natasha lived in an Indian ancestral home, which housed, as is common, her mother-in-law, husband, brother-in-law, and his Christian wife. Both, her in-laws were employed and hence had money to resources to go out to bars and party with friends. Natasha was expressly forbidden to seek employment. This restriction was imposed so that she could not mingle with her male colleagues who would be more appealing than her retarded husband, leading to romantic liaisons and elopement. All social gatherings were prohibited except for church. She was not allowed to wear trousers, shirts, or short dresses. She was not permitted any makeup or any customary silver or gold ornaments. Her last restriction was that Natasha is to postpone having a child until God somehow works a miracle and enables her retarded husband to emigrate to the West. Her mother-in-law repeatedly said she simply did not want to feed 3 mouths. The accident happened one day during sex, and she forgot to remind her husband to use a condom. Because of that single mistake, after 4 years she conceived and gave birth to a baby boy. Her son was born with a mental problem too. Her role as wife also turned her into an unpaid maidservant. She was required to rise at 4 a.m., to fill the water, wash the dishes, sweep the floors of 3 bedrooms and big living room, clean up 3 washrooms, water the plants, etc. 3 times in the week, Natasha had to wash the clothes of her husband, mother-in-law, brother-in-law, and his wife, and all other linen. The last 2 in-laws were not required to wash their clothes because they were employed and brought money into the house. Daily, she had to massage the body of her husband's mother. Often, her mother-in-law placed a huge padlock on the door whenever she went out. She was afraid that Natasha might run away or bring a man home in her absence and have sex with him. Her fear was not baseless because many times in anger Natasha had threatened to forsake her mentally challenged husband and run to her family in Gujarat. And that was exactly what eventually happened. After 10 years of toil and suffering, Natasha gained her freedom and ran away for good. It so happened that her mother-in-law allowed her to visit her family during Christmas. No sooner had she reached her village in Gujarat state, Natasha told her mother and father that they had thrown her in the well, and regardless of whether they chose to kill her or kick her out on the streets, she was adamant about staying put. Her parents finally admitted their mistake and allowed their daughter to live with them. Natasha tried to get a divorce through her church because she is still young and still has a chance at a second chance. Needless to say, the church leaders summarily turned her down because marital infidelity is the only condition that they deemed acceptable as a condition for divorce. They said the physical abuses of her mother-in-law and the mental retardation of her husband are not justifiable reasons for ending a holy Christian marriage. However, Natasha is a different creature from her friend Fiona, who simply evicted her abusive husband and remained a single parent because her church did not grant a divorce on the grounds of physical abuse. Natasha went a step further, and after a separation of 3 years, she obtained a divorce from the civil court in her home state of Gujarat. While she has successfully divorced him, her in-laws have put their money to beneficial use to gain permanent custody of her son. Everyone in her church refused to recognize her divorce and warned her against remarrying if her mad husband is still alive. Natasha is bolder than most and simply does not care what her Christian leaders, other believers, relatives, and friends thought of her. Shortly after her divorce, she received a marriage proposal from a North American man who had also been deceived into marrying a less than ideal spouse. He also is a victim of deception too. He is originally from North Africa. He is a half-caste, his mother is an Arab and his father an African. His Indian ex-wife married him because she wanted to go to the West. As soon as she reached North America, she began to show her true colors. She declared her unwillingness to work, stating that her husband is duty-bound to work and provide for the family. Somehow, she found some women in her church who supported her decision by claiming that the Bible precedence, which calls the husband the breadwinner for the family and the wife the custodian of the house and children. Before marriage, she told him she had successfully completed her grade 12, but after he married her, he discovered that she is a 4th grade dropout. What little education she had received was in the Marathi language and not in English. He, on the other hand, is a PhD holder and has acquired his master's and doctoral degrees from the University of Mumbai. Even so, she looked down on him and started to treat him as an inferior, calling him in Hindi bhut, which means a very scary ghost. She refused to allow him to bring his mother from North Africa to visit them because she said her children would be afraid of her. In short, she made it truly clear to him that he is below her high Indian status. It came to a point when he could not tolerate her arrogance and misbehavior towards him any longer, and he promptly divorced her. He remained single for a few years before he met Natasha and betrothed her. Natasha agreed to his second marriage proposal, and so he came to India to marry her in a civil ceremony. When Sister Christina became aware of those good developments, Natasha has already secured her spousal immigrant visa and is due to fly off to the promised land in a week. But the beautiful divorcee Gujarati girl Natasha's decision to divorce her mentally retarded husband and bold action to remarry another highly educated man has been roundly condemned by many of the church leaders and other believers. She has been flatly informed on her face many times that she is an adulteress because she divorced her Christian husband. Natasha ignored the clamor and scandal, and as planned, flew to her husband in the New World to begin her new life. She felt like a Puritan immigrant or a pilgrim girl who has just escaped religious persecution in Europe and is granted refuge in her new haven in Canada. Looking ahead to her second married life, Natasha's life gushed with a fountain of blessings. She genuinely enjoyed a happy married life with her second husband in the New World. And the Lord blessed them with 2 lovely daughters and a handsome boy. Now she can eat what she wants to eat, sleep, and wake up whenever she decided to, and is free to move about as she pleased. Making up for a lost time, she has been indulged herself with trousers, shirts, bikinis, and makeup. She has her own car. She is also gainfully employed and enjoyed her status as an equal life partner to an accomplished author and academician. Her husband has 2 bachelor's certificates, 2 master's degrees, and 1 doctorate degree. He is an author and scholar and wrote and published 25 books on the issues of women in Islam. He is an ex-Muslim who converted to Christianity while he was doing his doctorate degree at Mumbai University. He also obtained bachelor's and master's degrees in Canada. Natasha does not look down on her husband's mixed lineage but loves him and always treats him with respect. She often told her relatives and girlfriends that she is honored and proud to be a spouse of a highly educated and loving man. All linkages to her earlier self-image of being thrown into the well have evaporated. Natasha can now compare her former mentally challenged husband with her highly educated husband and proudly say to her girlfriends and relatives, "From being a zero wife I have become a heroine who married her hero." Her favorite proverb is, "From a zero to a hero." Down the road, Natasha came to know that her cruel ex-mother-in-law had lost all her money and had been forced to sell her house. Her change of fortune saw her living a destitute life, depending on what little money her American daughter sent to her occasionally. Ironically, her daughter had left her service of the church as a nun and bride of Christ to marry an Indian man, soon divorcing him and eventually married an American pastor who was also a divorcee. Her other son wasted all her money through unpleasant habits like alcohol drinking, gambling, wild nightlife, and many failed businesses. He also got cheated by his business partners. This bad second son eventually deserted his Christian wife without divorcing her and married a Hindu woman who dominated and ruled him just like the Phoenician queen Jezebel ruled and ruined the life of the Jewish king Ahab. Like he cheated on his Christian wife, his Hindu wife cheated on him and kicked him out of her father's house and brought her Hindu boyfriend. Therefore, he became addicted to alcohol and was sent to a rehabilitation center. Her grandson, the son who she took from his mother Natasha when he grew up, also began to steal her money, and when there was nothing left to steal, he sold the last small house they were living in. Sadly, when that old widow lost it all proved too much for her, and she lost her mind, becoming deaf to the world around her. Finally, she and her mentally challenged son and grandson ended up living in a small, rented apartment in one of the farthest and poorest suburbs of Mumbai, called Virar. Despite what her ex-mother-in-law and her ex-husband had done to her when she came to know about their adversity and hardship, Natasha started sending money periodically to help them. Sadly, when that widow died, her two sons had no money to buy her burial clothes until Natasha sent them money to meet the cost of her burial. At that time, her former employed son lost his job and became a heavy drunkard. His Hindu wife kicked him out of her house and did not allow him to see his little son and daughter. By then that widow's grandson eloped with a divorcee Hindu woman who is 35 years old, and he is just 17. He began to live with that Hindu divorcee without the benefit of marriage and fathered a baby girl without the marriage bond. After her death, her drunkard son was admitted to a rehabilitation center, and her mentally delayed son was sent to his aged auntie to take care of him in a remote village in the Gujarat state. Her daughter's American husband, who was a pastor of a small church, forbade his wife from sending money to her brothers after the death of her mother. He believes his wife's brothers are adults and therefore they are supposed to work and take care of themselves instead of perpetually depending on their mother and sister. The case of Natasha and her in-laws reminds us of what God said in His holy scripture, "Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, saith the Lord." The Epistle of Romans, chapter 12, verse 19. Chapter 15. The Chameleon Woman. Nevertheless, Sister Christina has rejected the advice of the divorcee Natasha and, like the abused wife Fiona, believed the words of the church leadership that Christian couples are only allowed divorce on the grounds of marital infidelity. According to them, no matter how many physical and verbal abuses that the Christian wife went through, she must continue her relationship with her abusive Christian husband. Even, in the case of desertion or wife beating, still she cannot have biblical justification for breaking the holy Christian marriage vow. She can separate and live alone, but she cannot divorce her husband and marry another man. In the meantime, Brother Bruno followed the advice of the church, and consequently rented an apartment, moved out of his family's house, and began to live with his wife. Even so, the new arrangement is met with anger and protest by his parents and siblings. His parents accused the church leadership of forcing their son to forsake one of the solid Indian customs and follow the Western man-made culture. Many parents in the church supported them and added their protests to the melee. Despite the protests and complaints of many families, the leaders of the church refused to rescind their decision, and the couple continued to live in the rented apartment. When her in-laws failed to effect any change in the decision of the leaders of the church, they began to squabble and create problems for their daughter-in-law. They started to dig deeper into her clouded past abusive life and spread rumors about her. Brother Bruno's two sisters and some of their church girlfriends were able to find juicy tidbits on the internet on the life of the Iranian heroine and former Miss World, Aphrodite Krishna Khan. Based on their thorough searches, they portrayed Sister Christina as a chameleon who kept changing her form and color to suit the purpose at hand. According to their findings, she was once a Muslim girl going by the name Ifat Khan. That girl Ifat had married a Saudi business tycoon called Sheikh Faiz bin Ahmed. She married the 70-year-old Saudi man for his money. He paid her and her poor Muslim mother many crores of Indian rupees. She accepted him because she knew he was going to die soon. This pedophile old Arab man got strangled to death inside the Mumbai Arthur Road jail. Then his Muslim wife Ifat Khan changed her name and began to go by the moniker of the Iranian heroine, at which time she took on the identity of Aphrodite Krishna Khan. Aphrodite had a secret love affair with a wealthy Bollywood film director known as Mahmood Khan and became his secret mistress because he promised to make her a shining film star. He secretly married her as his Muslim wife number 2 and kept her in his farmhouse. During acting in her first movie, she also had an affair with a rising Bollywood film star named Samir Krishna and soon after changed her name to Aphrodite Krishna Khan, professing to be a Hindu and a Muslim girl at the same time. Shortly thereafter, she married an NRI Hindu named Rahul Patel and went by the name of Pooja Patel. She married Rahul Patel so that she could go to the United States of America. To reach America, she agreed to become a Hindu girl and marry a Hindu man. When she arrived in the Promised Land, she left her Hindu husband and hooked herself up with a Muslim man by the name of Jamal Khan, reverting to her old name of Aphrodite Khan and re-embracing Islam. Just before she returned to India, she embraced the Christian faith and had her name legally changed to Christina Lewinsky. Finally, she married their brother, Bruno, and became Christina Fernandez. After those unpleasant discoveries, the two sisters and their girlfriends stopped referring to her as Sister Christina and began to call her the Chameleon Woman. While they could not find any overt reason for her conversion to Christianity, Brother Bruno's two sisters and their cohorts in the church assumed that Aphrodite Khan had fallen in love with a wealthy American man, for whom she changed her religion and went by the name Christina Lewinsky. Their report also uncovered a previous internet article, which detailed her incarceration in a Mumbai women's jail, and the disgraceful title that was given to her at that time, the Tawaif of Bollywood, or the high-profile prostitute of the film industry. They told everybody in the church that while the sister-in-law was in the ladies' jail, she became a high-profile prostitute of Bollywood. She had been arrested for being the highest-paid Bollywood prostitute and had sexual relations with many film stars and directors, politicians, top officials in the Mumbai Police Department, and wealthy people. Although their report included many more false details which had never happened, it said nothing about her successes in life of winning Miss Mumbai, Miss India, and Miss World. Furthermore, it said nothing about her controversial remarks about the Prophet Muhammad and the Quran and the assassination plot of Dawood Ibrahim's Muslim terrorists, which forced her to flee out of India and ended up in the United States of America. From that point, adding insult to injury, the vengeful two girls started to call her on her face the Chameleon Woman. With the ammunition needed, Brother Bruno's two sisters went on the offensive and began harassing their brother's wife. They started to phone her at her apartment and confront her about her disgraceful past. They accused her of deception and hiding her nasty past in many marriages before their brother Bruno fell victim to her trap. According to them, it is the ultimate degradation in their Mangalorean Christian culture to wed a pure and chaste boy like their brother Bruno to a whore woman who had not only gone through many husbands but also slept around with other men like a street hooker. They reinforced their stand by acknowledging that their brother deserved a virgin instead of a dirty woman who had sex with many men just like she-dog with many dogs. They also called her the dirty prostitute and Tawaif of Bollywood. They punctuated their phone calls with unannounced and unnecessary visits hoping to plague her into compliance. Even their two parents and their three brothers stood with the two girls. They simply want to cut through the chase and have her forget her search for her Muslim mother, and she should immediately take her husband to America so that he can take them to the Promised Land too. Sister Christina's in-laws turned her life into hell with no place for refuge. The very people she thought are living with the guidance of the Holy Spirit in Christ are now hounding her to do their bidding. Her husband sided with his parents, of course, and joined in the diatribe about their pending immigration status. He wants her to begin the process of applying for him before the 6 months' grace is over. He knows, just like everyone else, that his application process may take more than another 6 months. Without informing his wife, her husband applied for an Indian passport, and when the passport is in his hands, continued to harangue her to apply for one too. Her new Indian passport must bear the name Christina Fernandez. Her mission is clear. She refused all suggestions, resulting in her husband taking their dispute once again to the senior pastor and his wife. He accused his wife of reneging on her word and trying to run off to America without him. The pastor saw his point and called Sister Christina in for a talk. He firmly told her to apply for a new passport with her husband's last name. Being left with no choice, she applied for a new Indian passport and changed her name from Christina Lewinsky to Christina Fernandez. What gave her so much sorrow is not having double nationalities, now American and Indian, but discarding her precious last name of her American lover Michael and his Jewish last name, Lewinsky, and replacing it with the detestable last name of her Indian husband, Fernandez. She felt as if she had cheated on Michael, and for no good reason. She had abandoned his last name. She is sorrowful because instead of marrying her archangel Michael, she wedded the Antichrist, Bruno Fernandez. She is keeping her love treasure in her injured heart and cherished her deep and genuine love for her complete Jew, her American lover, Michael Lewinsky. As soon as Mrs. Fernandez's new passport is issued, her husband began to harass her to approach the American consulate in Mumbai and apply for joint visas for her Indian spouse, father-in-law, and mother-in-law to join her in the United States of America. Her in-laws knew that through her they are entitled to get immigrant visas to the promised land. Once again, Sister Christina has been forced through some leaders of the church to apply for immigrant visas for her Christian spouse and his parents. However, before her husband and his parents got their immigration visas to the USA, the land that flows with honey and money, something else developed to complicate the matter for her. At this time, a full year has passed since Christina arrived in Mumbai and joined that Indian heretical church. Finally, her search efforts for her biological mother bore fruit. A Christian woman, who had lived as a Muslim before adopting Christianity, has heard about her search, and has come forward to her with information about Rayhana Khan. According to the source, she knows of a Muslim woman named Rayhana Khan who has 3 sons. She had returned from America, and when she arrived, she told all her Muslim neighbors that her Indian husband had divorced her, hence her return to the motherland. This ex-Muslim woman informer also conveyed some gossip to other women in the church. She did not share that additional information with Sister Christina. She added that she knew of an NRI, an American Muslim man who visited India briefly and knew of the scandal, which led Rayhana Khan to forsake her paradise-like life in America and sold her house and eventually return home to India. According to the former friend of the Khan family, Mr. Khan had apparently fallen in love with a young girl who was young enough to be his daughter and had eventually ignored and deserted Mrs. Khan. In addition to the huge age difference between the two lovers, the girl is a Hindu and hence she refused to marry Mr. Khan until he converted to Hinduism. Moreover, he made his new girlfriend pregnant before he married her. The girl had turned out to be Mrs. Khan's daughter, who became a Hindu. Therefore, she discovered her husband had cheated on her with her own daughter and he married his own stepdaughter, which is an incestuous relationship and illegal in America. Mrs. Khan understood if she took the matter to a court of law, she would be shooting herself in the foot because that would expose the abominable deed of her own daughter. The scandal of her bad husband and wicked daughter had already begun to smell out, and every Indian in the state speaking about it. The resulting scandal and the ignominy of it all prompted Rayhana Khan to flee from America and returning India to hide. After she had settled in Mumbai with her 3 sons, Rayhana betrothed for second Islamic marriage by a prominent Muslim mullah and married him. He is the imam of the biggest mosque in Mumbai town. Mrs. Khan became his 3rd wife, but only due to her age and her situation did Rayhana agree to marry him. She understood his position and social standing could give her much-needed acceptance and security, never mind that he was old enough to be her grandfather. After that, the ex-Muslim woman gave Christina the address of her former hut when she used to live in Mumbai town near the house of the American woman Rayhana Khan. She told her to go to that address and ask the Muslim women living near that hut for the whereabouts of Begum Rayhana Sheikh al-Din Khan. However, before his American wife went to meet her Muslim mother, her Christian husband claimed to have seen a vision from the Lord. In a secret family meeting without the presence of his wife, he shared his divine vision with his parents and siblings and sought their wise advice. Before we heard what, his family members advised him to let us state briefly his so-called divine vision. He said, "Behold, while he is lying on his bed, he saw in a dream his wife is but naked and besides her is standing a bare-naked young white guy. Then he saw his wife and the American guy are doing sex the same way those dirty infidels do in pornographic videos. When he confronted his bad wife and rebuked her about her abominable deed, she said the white guy is her American lover and she has decided to leave her Indian husband and attach herself with him without divorce. All the family members believed in his divine vision and assured him that was what was going to happen when he reached America with his wife. Even the older sister claimed to have seen in her dream a similar dream about his chameleon wife. She called her the cobra wife and the dirty waif or prostitute of Bollywood. Then she advised her brother to divorce his prostitute wife and look for a virgin Christian girl and marry her. However, his father and mother rejected her foolish advice and said their good son must wait until his American wife takes him with his parents to the promised land. Then and only then, when they are safely reached by the will of God to America, Bruno must divorce his bad wife, return to India, and marry a suitable Mangalorean Christian virgin bride. Every son and daughter supported the wise advice of the parents. In that way, the problem has been solved, and the secret meeting is concluded by reaching a collective decision that Mr. Bruno Fernandez must divorce Mrs. Christina Fernandez as soon as he settled with his parents in America.